account of some sacrificial rites practiced by the Chokewokee Indians in Central South America. These rites consist of chucking vast quantities of rubies, emeralds, diamonds, and whatnot into a sacred lake on the top of a mountain. Position of lake conveniently stated, and colour blue on plan, but no information as to how the lake got to the top of the mountain. As this wasteful business had been taking place once a month for about 10 million years, the idea was that the aforesaid lake might be worth dredging. The hero puts his last fiver on a horse, which of course wins at 100 to 1, and with his money he fits out an expedition to go out to South America. What did I think of that for a first act? I said it was simply great. But wasn't everything going too smoothly? There surely ought to be a villain to steal a copy of the agenda. That would introduce exciting complications in the second act and make it last longer. My amendment was agreed to without a division and incorporated into the general scheme. The second act occurred on the banks of the lake and was full of incident. First of all, there was the problem of dredging. I suggested draining the lake. Why not drill a hole in the bottom of it and let the water run through into the mountain? Martin didn't approve of that. He'd been a civil engineer. He said it would be more scientific to draw it off through a trench. When this engineering work is nearly finished, the villain happens along with an expedition of his own. There's a scrap, and they're driven off, leaving the hero's party up to their knees in jewels. Then the Chokewokee Indians turn up in force and capture them. The officer in charge takes a very serious view of the hero's operations and says it's a job for the Queen Goddess to settle. According to him, this lady is a sort of cross between she, Cleopatra, and the Queen of Sheba. She is white, marvellously beautiful and all that, and apparently wears nothing but rubies and emeralds. I couldn't help warning Martin not to make the piece too expensive to dress, or there'd be nothing left for the charity. He said he'd thought of that. They'd only be imitation jewels. Well, the second act closes with the hero and his party being marched off to the Queen Goddess's palace. You can imagine the last act, a scene of barbaric splendour. There's a sort of trial. The lady first of all sentences the hero to a sticky death. Then she relents and wants to marry him instead. But he, being a hero, is obliged to refuse. Got a young woman at home and so on. And things are looking very bleak for him, when the heroine and her father turn up with a rescue party, and all ends happily. Martin said, "What do you think of that for a plot?" And for the life of me I couldn't tell him. He was my guess for the moment. I said, "I'm not sure, but I think it's a masterpiece. Let's get it onto paper at once." So we did. We finished the whiskey at 3 o'clock, and the first act at 5 past. We wrote the second act the next night, and finished the play the night after. We might have taken a little longer, only it was due to be performed in 3 weeks' time. I admit it was very lightly constructed, but it was only meant to last for one night. I didn't worry about stage directions, because it struck me that the producer, whoever he was, might do that. Martin wanted to know what a producer was. He seemed to think he was the man who produced the money. I explained that the idea was not usually borne out in actual practice, judging from the ones I knew, but that they had their uses all the same. He wondered whether the idea of producing the show would appeal to me at all. Of course, I didn't know as much as I do now, or I shouldn't have let myself in. As it was, he carted me down to Mrs. Wilson's 2 days later. I must say, they were all charming people, but a little too rich. Huge house in the middle of a park, lots of cars, swimming bath, squash court, and so on. It was all rather oppressive until one got used to it. One couldn't help wondering why they troubled to get up an entertainment for the charity at all. It would have been so much easier to write the cheque and have done with it. But no, they wanted to act. I asked what the charity was that the whole thing was for. They told me it was to build a cabmen's shelter at the